Today we're going to take a look at gas exchange in plants. This is actually 3.3 in your textbook, and I would recommend that you take a look at that and read through it, because sometimes reading it or hearing it in a different way can be really helpful. So all living things must exchange gases with the environment and distribute gases throughout the quote-unquote body. So whether that is an animal organism and it has a body, or it's a plant and we need to distribute throughout the plant, it's important that there's systems in place to move things around and allow particles in and out. The primary gas exchange organs in plants are the leaves. So they're the ones that really control this process. Carbon dioxide, CO2, and water vapor move in by diffusion. So that means down the concentration gradient, or another way of saying that would be from high to low concentration. Okay. So these gases move through diffusion in and out of the stomata. And once they are into the plant, they move between the spaces in the mesophyll, particularly the spongy mesophyll, and the rest of the plant cells. In woody plants, the openings in the stems are called lenticels, and they're important in gas exchange. So they might not have as many stomata or stoma, so what they are using are these things called lenticels. Here's a picture of lenticels, like up close on a tree of some sort. You can see that they have a much different shape than a stomata. So a stomata is like two cells. The lenticels look like this long, skinny opening. So when gases are exchanged in plants, water vapor is lost. Okay, so this is a big problem in dry conditions. What happens is the guard cells are in control of the exchange of gases and water vapor through the leaves. So as CO2 is entering the leaf, again through the stoma, oxygen and water vapor leave. So water in the form of a gas. So the problem really is that although we are exchanging oxygen and carbon dioxide, water vapor is being lost through the plant as well. So water enters the plant, of course, through the roots, is moved up the plant through the xylem, which we talk about next. And the idea here is that some water is lost through the stomata in the leaf as it is undergoing photosynthesis. So the opening and closing of stomata is regulated by turgor, which is osmotic pressure. This is the idea here. These cells are under turgor, or have greater turgor than these ones, because they are more full of water, meaning they are like more full. Okay, so these ones are kind of more jelly-like. These ones are a little bit harder or more stiff. So they're a little bit more over full. I don't know how else to describe that. So these guard cells, when there's lots of water in the plant, there's lots of water in the cells. And the water in the cells is stored specifically in the vacuoles. Okay, so this is the vacuole. And when there's lots of water available to the plant, the vacuoles fill up in all of the cells, increasing that turgor. So when that happens, the cells swell. And when the cells are swollen, they open. And the reason they're able to open is that the outside has a thinner wall. So the outer walls are thinner. So as the cell is expanding, it's easier for the cell to expand outwards this way than it is this way. You can kind of see even in this diagram that this is a bit of a thicker wall on the inside, specifically again for guard cells. So as they increase in size, they increase outwards and open up. When they are shrunk, they close up because the vacuole isn't quite as large. Okay, and so the swelling goes down and the cells close up. So when they're open, that's when they're allowing oxygen in, carbon dioxide out, oxygen, carbon dioxide in for photosynthesis, and oxygen out, the product of photosynthesis. Remember, as oxygen is coming out, water vapor is also leaving. Okay, so when there's low water, like hot days, midday, or during a drought, the plant loses water, the central vacuoles in the guard cells loses water, and the guard cells relax or shrink, closing the stoma. This prevents any further water loss, aka the loss of water through water vapor. Okay. Water loss, aka where water is lost through water vapor, has a specific name. This is called transpiration. So transpiration is the loss of water vapor, specifically through the stoma. So stoma open and close during the day and night. So during the day, when photosynthesis is like easy to do because there's sunlight, stoma will open to allow CO2 in. Then at night, they close and prevent any further water loss. If they're not undergoing photosynthesis, there's no need to exchange gases. Remember, cells in the plant still undergo cellular respiration, but it's on a much smaller scale than humans, so they can kind of store some of that CO2 until the morning to release it when the stoma open again. So there's some desert plants that have adapted to avoid desiccation, aka drying out because it is so hot in the desert. Because remember, when stoma open, water vapor leaves. So if they don't have much water available to them, they really want to preserve that as much as possible. So there's a few things they do, not just 3, but we'll highlight a few. The big one is that stoma open at night. And store CO2 in a different form until they open. Okay, so stoma open only at night in this case, because typically at night it's cooler and they can reduce water loss this way. Another one is they have fewer stoma, okay, so that they lose less water. They can exchange gases just in a smaller quantity. There's a few other things that they do, so take your pick here. They store water in fleshy areas, if you will, like the stem, leaves, roots, depending on what kind of plant. So for instance, like aloe vera plants, they store quite a bit of water. They can also have waxy cuticles. So remember, the cuticle is the top layer. Remember, then there's the epidermal cells, and then there's the palisade cells, and those ones are really tightly packed, and those are the site of chlorophyll. Then below that, there's the spongy mesophyll cells, and they're quite spaced out. And then the bottom layer, again, of epidermal cells and a cuticle. This is also where the stoma are. So they have like a more waxy or a thicker cuticle to prevent water loss around the stomas. And the last thing is that they have a really big root system typically. So an extensive root system. So a plant will, of course, grow a regular root system, but in the desert, they will grow outwards so that they can maximize the area where there could be water that has fallen, okay, or dew from the plant. But they also grow quite deep because water doesn't evaporate quite as easily from deeper soil. So lots of different ways that they can adapt to make sure that they are not drying out or losing more water than they needed. For homework, again, I would read this section, and then on page 314, I would recommend you take a look at number 2 through 10 and 12. And then there's also a diagram just after this in your notes. It says in the following diagram, label the stoma, guard cell, spongy tissue, the upper surface of the leaf, the lower surface of the leaf, and draw arrows to show where oxygen, water, and carbon dioxide go during photosynthetic time. So while this plant is undergoing photosynthesis, which direction are gases moving and how do they move through the cell? We'll take a look at that together as we begin our lesson on Monday.